Hello, I'm Sarah from CAMHS, and as part of the How You Doing series, today we're going to focus on worry. Hopefully by the end of this video you will understand a little bit more about worry, why we do it, a bit of the science behind it, and start to think about when it's becoming a problem. Hopefully we'll have time to think about the different types of worries that we have, and whether they're in our heads or whether it's something we can do something about. And then we're going to spend some time thinking about how to worry a bit less. What can we do instead? How can we manage? Okay, so what is worry? Well, worry is when you spend time thinking about something that you perceive as a problem. You feel like it's something difficult that you're spending lots of time thinking about. And you know what? We all do it. Everybody has worries. I guess what we need to be careful of is when those worries are kind of taking over. So if our worries are becoming a problem, we might be grumpy because we just haven't got the time to think about anything else because we're too busy worrying about our worries. We might get upset easily. We might have trouble paying attention, concentrating on things could be really hard. We could feel tired, exhausted. And also there's changes in our body too. So we might feel tense. We might feel a little bit sick. We might have pain in our necks and shoulders. We might struggle sleeping. If you notice any of these things in yourself, that's when it might be a good time to think, let's do something about this. Okay, so let's think about a little bit of science behind the worry. So our brain is a beautiful thing, hard to understand at times. When it senses danger, either real or imaginary, we go into this fight or flight mode. And our body releases something called adrenaline, which gets us ready for action. In the olden days, this would have been to survive. You've got to run for your life. And right now, that adrenaline still happens to us. So, it increases our heart rate so that our blood pumps really, really quickly around the body, which then kind of makes our muscles overheat because of all this energy. So then we start to sweat to cool the muscles down. And sometimes our digestive system can shut down too because all the blood is diverted from our stomach muscles. And that can create the butterfly feeling that sometimes happens when we get worried. Depending on how worried you become, depends on how long it takes for our body to get back to normal, to regulate itself. And I'll give you some tips on that later, but it can take up to an hour for our body to feel okay again. So here at CAMHS, we like to think about there being two types of worries. There's the practical worries, and what we call hypothetical. So that means in our mind, imaginary worries. So practical worries are things like, I don't have enough time to do my homework, I'm going to miss the bus, I've got a toothache. They're all things that we could maybe do something about. Whereas hypothetical worries, our imaginary worries, in our heads, mainly start with a what if. So, what if I go outside and fall over? What if I go to school and people laugh at me? They're the worries that we usually don't have much control over. It's so important that we get to know our worries. Worries are linked to mood. They impact our confidence. They affect our relationships, because if we're really worried, we won't go and talk to those people. They affect the choices that we make. So we can be so worried about the what ifs that we don't go to that swimming club, or we don't go to that party. And that affects our life. So it's really important that you get to know your own worries. You get to know whether they're practical or in your head. And then you can start to manage them. So now I'm going to talk through a few ideas of how to manage some of those worries. Now we'll spend some time thinking about how to manage these worries. Okay, so you've worked out whether it's a practical worry or it's something in your head. If it's a practical worry, something you can do something about personally or ask other people to help you with it, then it's all about problem solving. And as part of our How You Doing series of videos, we have one focused on problem solving. So I would direct you to that video to help you manage your practical worries. If we're thinking, okay, so these worries are a bit more in my head, how do we manage them? So there's a couple of ideas that I'm going to talk you through today. A worry diary. Keeping a log of the things that you're worried about. Sounds simple, right? So you can do this on your phone. You can put post-it notes around the house. You can actually have a diary to write and record things in. And I guess it's important to capture what that worry is, but also to notice how worried you are about it. So I always think about it on like percentages. So I'm 100% worried about this, or maybe I'm only 10% worried about this. You can do it on a scale of 0 to 10 if you think that's easier, whatever works for you. But it's so important to know what the worry is and to track it to see how worried you are about it. Once you've got your worry diary, then we'll dedicate some time to look through it. And we like to think of that as worry time. Yeah? Because it's so important to keep our time. It's precious, isn't it? And it's so important to actually worry about these things, because if we try to block out these worries, then often what happens is we just think about them even more and more and more, and they can take over. So it's so important to dedicate time to worry. And whether that's half an hour after tea or when you get home from a walk, I would probably recommend not doing it before bed, because often that's when our mind can start to wander and then we maybe have trouble sleeping. So yeah, so worry time. Now you're in your safe space. You've got no distractions. No one's going to bother you. It's your time to worry. So I'd like you to challenge yourself with these questions. To ask yourself, how do I feel about that worry now? So you'll get your worry diary out and have a look at some of these things. How do I feel about that now? I would probably track it again. So whether you were 100% then, 10% now, or however you're tracking your worry. And then you can say, did what I was worried about actually happen? Because time will have passed and you'll know. So did that happen? Yes, it did. Okay, so how did I deal with it? What are my skills? I got through that. How? Or it might not have happened. And then you can think, okay, don't need to worry about that. Didn't happen. I wonder then if you can cross out any of your worries, because actually now you're in your safe space, time's passed, they're no longer a problem. You're not worried about those things anymore. Or you might have worked them out by now. And at the end of the worry time, I'm wondering if you can throw away your worries for the day. Sometimes that really helps us. You know, we've got them written down, we can either rip them up or delete them off our phone and throw them away because we've dealt with it. We've spent time thinking about them. Another suggestion could be having a worry doll or a worry toy. Pets are usually quite good for this because they don't talk back. So you can either tell your worry toy or your pet all of these things that you've been worried about. And once they're out, sometimes that feels like, oh gosh, a weight's been lifted, thank goodness for that. And you can start to feel a bit better about things. Now, it's really important that at the end of our worry time, we move on to something else. Yeah, so we don't set worry time for 6 o'clock and spend the whole night worrying. We set worry time from 6 o'clock till 20 past 6. And at 20 past 6, we either have an alarm on our phone or we tell mum to come and get us, or brother or sibling or whoever it is, and distract yourself with something else. So it's so important to then know what you can do that can snap you out of that worry time. Because sometimes our mind thinks things even if we don't want it to. So I'm going to give you an example. Don't think of a blue tree. Don't think of its blue leaves. Don't think of its dark blue trunk and those different coloured bluebirds sat in the tree. I'm guessing that you're thinking of it, right? So that's an example of, even though our mind doesn't want to think those things, we are. So a really good way to get away from that is the distraction, what I was talking about a second ago. So think of a pink elephant. Think of that pink trunk and those tusks and that big pink body. So you're not thinking of the blue tree anymore because we're distracted with something else. And that's just an example of how you can distract yourself from your worry time by thinking of something completely different. Another idea that I'd like to share with you today is challenging your thoughts. So challenging that worry. And you can do that in the moment. So once you've regulated your body and blood pumping around and you go, deep breath, you have the headspace to start challenging your thoughts. So you can catch the thought, catch that worry, and think, okay, if I had to argue this, what would my argument be? What would be the stuff that supports that thought, and what would be the stuff that's against it? So let's say you're really worried about going to the supermarket because somebody might pull a face at you and look at you funny. Okay, so the evidence for that is that, yeah, people do look at people. The evidence against that is, okay, well, they might just look like that. That might be their face. They might be confused about something. They could be staring at something on the shelf they don't understand. They might feel awkward too. And then you can help to think of a clearer thought. Like, okay, I might go out to the supermarket and someone might look at me funny, but it might not be directed at me. Personally, they might be just thinking about something. So do you see what I've done with that thought? I've kind of made a little argument in my head about it. And yeah, you could talk this through with someone, a family member or a friend. Ask them to find the evidence for and against it with you. And then you become clearer in your thinking. Yeah. You can also ask yourself, okay, what would my best friend say about this thought? That's a good one. And then I wonder if you could also ask yourself, are there kinder ways to speak to myself about this? So if you had the thought of, oh gosh, you know, I can't manage that situation, I just can't manage it. To be kinder to yourself, you could give yourself the message of, okay, you might not manage it, Sarah, but you know what? You've tried, and well done you for trying. So I guess the messages we give ourselves in that moment can really, really help us manage our worry. If we're thinking, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, our worry gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And if we take a deep breath and we give ourselves positive talk and we say, okay, this seems big right now, but I'll wait until worry time and I might feel differently then. Try it. See what works for you.